Hello everybody, welcome to the next tutorial lesson. This is the last day of 2022 and I've got a tutorial for you. So we're going to make a little scene, we're going to make some clouds, a quick distribution and scattering, a little bit of lightning and a little castle in the middle, and then we're going to make it look something like this. And I'll show you a couple of really quick and effective methods for doing this that will save you a ton of time. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so let's start setting up the scene. What you can do now is hit Shift A and go into the mesh menu, click landscape. What you can do then is come on down to the yin yang and pull that up, and I can modify the mesh size to get those extra ripples in there. So just left click, drag down, hit something like 3 or 4, and then you'll have this landscape. And then you can mess around with the settings, but the distortion works pretty good for creating the kind of nice ripple effect that we're looking for, and then you can work on the depth to kind of clean that up. Also, if you want, you can add in a water plane. Hit G and Z to kind of bring that up just a little bit, and then with something like Blender Kit, you can add a water texture to that. Now for the cloud effect above, I'm just going to hit Shift A, drop in a basic plane. I'm going to come over to the modifiers and drop on an ocean. And then I'll come down to the spectrum. I'm going to go from turbulent ocean to established ocean. Now I want to bring the resolution up so it looks nice and bumpy because we're making it clouds. And I'll bring that up to something like 14. I don't know why, but I just feel like even numbers work really well in Blender. So I'll stick with that. Now we can scale this thing down. G and Z to bring it up just a touch. And now we're starting to get some clouds. One thing you want to do though, and once you've got these settings where you would like them, and you can mess around with them, but just be careful because you'll create lots of little artifacts that won't be noticeable until you actually render. So you'll end up with lots of like little creases and cracks and things like that, and we'll fix all of that in just a minute. But right now I'm going to go ahead and apply that, jump into edit mode, go to edge select, just select one edge, go to select all by trait, non-manifold, hit extrude, and press Z to extrude that on the Z. Now you want to scale that flat, so hit S to scale, Z to get it on the Z, and 0 on the number pad, and then you can hit enter, or left click on the mouse. Now hit F to fill that and make a face, and now we've got our clouds pretty well set up. So what we're going to do now is drop in some lights, because obviously you want to get your scene lit as soon as possible. We're going to put an area light in, so G and Z to bring that up. And what we can do is take up a top view and scale that until it's about the size of the clouds. And then I'll take up 1, G and Z, bring that up. And I'm going to hit Shift D, G and X, and kind of bring this one over, and G and Z maybe to bring it down just a touch. So now we've got 2 lights in there, and I'm just Z swiping, by the way. If you hit Z and then quickly move over, then you'll have that. And don't forget, create some save points, and this could get a little heavy because it's going to be a volumetric setup, so you can always go over to the render tab, go from GPU compute to CPU compute if it ever runs out of memory, so you don't have to keep restarting Blender. Just a little quick tip for you. So now with the cloud selected, I'm going to come over here, create new material, go to the surface, and I actually want to remove the surface. And I'm going to drop down volume, and I can close off surface, don't need it. I'll go ahead and add a principled volume to this. Now the density can be played with shortly. What we're going to do is we're going to try to look at this in the rendered view and make sure you've got scene light and scene world on. I'll jump back into edit mode, hit A for all, and I'll press Alt N, and I want to recalculate these normals to the outside. And now we've got to crank up our lights pretty high, so we can start off with like 90,000, and if that's going to be too bright, you know, obviously you can turn that down a little bit, but the idea is that, let's pick a different kind of color here. The idea is that the volumetrics is going to pick up a lot of that. I'm going to move the volume to density to 10, so you can adjust that as you see fit, and it's going to take a good little bit of tweaking. And now I'll offset this one to a different color, and I'm going to turn this one up to 120,000. And then you've just got to move the lights up and down with G and Z and kind of get this nice little pattern breaking through the clouds, however it works out for you. Alright, just so you can kind of see what I did, there's like 1,000 different ways to go about this. I took one light, 40,000, brought it to a deeper orange, and you can get in here and kind of like mess around with how intense that is and which one shows up the brightest. And then I put another one to like a light blue at around 7,000, and you kind of adjust that as you wish. And now you've got some clouds. Now this one actually worked out pretty good for me, but if it doesn't work out good for you and you've got lots of little cracks and stuff where the light's kind of poking through, you can select the clouds, come in and add a displace modifier, and then drag that to like -0.1 and kind of start there, and it should clean all of that up for you. And just kind of incrementally bring it back, like 0.01 less than that is 0.09, right? And then -0.07, 0.8, 0.75, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just kind of go down until you kind of close that gap. I kind of nailed it pretty good with my resolution in the beginning. So if you're following along, hopefully you've got those results. Now I've got an FBX file that I'm just going to import, and I've given you guys that on the download, so check in the link below. I'll make a few different buildings that I modeled out, some with Grid Modeler, and you can do quite a bit. So I'll go ahead and drop a camera in the scene, and then I'm just going to start moving things around to kind of make them fit nicely. And I want the top of this building to be basically poking into the clouds. I'm going to scale this down just a touch, maybe scale it on the Z. And I want part of that peak going through the cloud so it looks pretty cool. There we go, that's not too bad for a start. Now I'm going to use Blender Kit, and I'm going to drop in a couple of trees. I'll choose this little thin tree right here. Scale it down, and I'm going to bring in a dead tree. And I'll scale that down as well. Now I'm going to do, because I don't want to instance these, I'm going to delete those, and that's going to throw those into the center position. And they'll look kind of crazy, but I'm just going to bring these back out, scale them down to something reasonable, and apply the scale. And I'm going to do the same with this one, only I'm going to grab all of it and Control J join it just for this video. All right, I'll take those two trees, I'll press M, create a new collection, just call it trees 1. And now I want to use the rock generator that's built into Blender. And I'll drop a rock in, and I'm going to bring that out as well and scale that down. It's got a lot of modifiers, so I'm just going to go ahead and apply it so it doesn't slug up. And I'll bring it down to something like that, / so I can kind of work with it. I want to hit Alt D and create another copy of that. Maybe just rotate this one around a little bit. And I will press M, new collection. I'll just call those rocks 1. / back out, and I will make sure to apply scale to those. Actually, I'll bring them down a touch more. And so it's a good idea to keep your hierarchy nice and clean. Alright, so I've got my trees, my rocks, my landscapes in there. Render, I've got lights and cameras, and then for my main building, I'm going to have the cube in there, which is just going to be this skyscraper. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and split my screen, pull up the geometry nodes workspace. I'm going to come over here. I don't want to select the water plane, so let's go ahead and hide that. I'm just going to select the main geometry, pull out my end panel, and I'm going to apply an IA scatter to this. Now the IA scatter geometry node is pretty easy to work with, and I've gone over a tutorial for that already, so I'm not going to go back over that again. I'm just going to click Use Collection, Use Proxies, Bounding Box, and I'm going to pull up Trees 1 so it will start scattering that. Now my goal is to get the trees to just show up on the top. and maybe down the slope a little bit for these rings. And the IA scatter has just the right thing for that. It's got the distribution minimum maximum for the slope and for the height. So to get a slightly better idea of what this is actually doing, I'll turn up the density max just a little bit. And then I can make all the necessary adjustments, like bringing the slope maximum down just a little bit so you can see how that's going to affect it. And then the distribution height, I can affect that as well, and come up with some pretty cool results. Now I want to end up with the trees effectively just rippling out. Alright, a little tedious, but easy enough. Take the distribution slope minimum, put that to 0.8, the max at 1, distribution height at 0.1, and the distribution height maximum at 0.7 if you're using IA scatter, because that's how you're going to get these spirals lit up like that. Now for the fun of it, I can lower the viewport density, and you do have to bring the density up so you can kind of see what you're doing. I'll bring this up to something like 2000. The viewport's still working pretty nice, and I'm going to bring everything back, take up the camera view, and give this a look at in cycles. And what I want to do is see how my world lighting is opposed to anything else, because I don't really want that to like take everything over. And it might be a good idea to throw a sky texture in. It's only going to work in cycles, and I'll bring the strength of that down to like 0.05, and then I can bring the intensity to like 0.3, and from there you can start kind of playing around with the cloud work in the back, you know, and see how that's going to end up looking for you, and potentially just kind of match everything up to your scene. And I'm just kind of using these settings to create a slightly volumetric effect in the background. And now I can jump back over into solid view, and I can drop in another landscape if I wish. It kind of puts something in the background. So I'll just move this over here. And I actually don't want that. The landscape tool will bring up the last thing you were working with, so it's a good idea to come back and restore the operator default. And once you've got that, you can kind of move that out, scale it up just a touch. I'll take the camera view, and you can kind of scale it, rotate it, do whatever you want with it, and kind of fill in the background just a little bit. And I'll hit Alt-D and create another one, and it might be just as easy to come out here and scale those things up. So I'll Alt-D this over here, rotate it so it doesn't quite look the same, and then we'll take the camera view and see how that is. That's not too bad. Now the fun is, if you're using version 3.4 of Blender, you can come back over here, switch to CPU, and pull up path guiding. Make sure to set whatever your render samples are to be more than the training samples. So you could conceptually bring this down to 100, and it's going to train the light in the different areas where it really should be to be better. So if you come back up to your actual maximum samples and put it to something like 200, maybe it takes a little bit longer with the CPU, but it's the only way you're going to get path guiding. Now before I finish up, I'm going to go ahead and Shift A, drop in another light. I'll make this a point light. I'm going to jump back over to cycles, and I want to increase the intensity of this to like 500 maybe, and this can be representative, if you will, of a sun, because this is volumetrics, and you could have a lightning bolt coming out through that as well. Now I'm using the KS Lightning mod here, and this is just a cool little thing. You kind of drop in the scene, and I want to drop the lightning in where my point light is. Now you can tweak out not only the lights in the sky and the volumetrics, but you can actually change the color of the lightning if you want to kind of match what's going on in your scene. Bring it down to like maybe a little bit more of a white lightning. Do like that blue electric arc, and we can go from 2D to 3D, and it's going to like really amp up the branches. And then you can modify everything over here. I'll have another tutorial for that in the near future. And so now I'm going to go ahead and actually render this out with the path guiding on, happy rendering, and I'll see you guys on the other side of it. Alright, here is my final render for now. What I did is I instanced the rocks, put a texture on them, scaled them, offset, changed my lighting just a little bit. I textured the water plane because if you know anything about photography, emphasis through reflection is huge. So I've got this nice reflection right here of the trees, a little bit of the water, and of course I could take up 101 different camera angles and lighting angles to make this thing so much better. But anyways, the takeaway is the scene creation and the cloud volume, where you can kind of play and adjust all that stuff. And as always, everybody, I really appreciate you watching the video. Thank you for all the subscribes. Make sure, if you're not subscribed, keep updated on all the different things I'm coming out with. So smash that subscribe and smash that like button on the way out. And I want to wish everybody a happy 2023. We are going to crush it 2023. And I will see you guys in the next tutorial lesson.